Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Since it's the end of the year, I actually wanted to do my first ever best of episode. So we're going to just take some clips from conversations throughout my first year in starting a podcast. And I'm actually, for those watching on video, I just threw on my unicorn hat as well. Just you almost never catch me wearing a hat because it messes up my hair, and I like my hair. So I just wanted to do something a little bit different for that. But yeah, this year was interesting for me. I finally took the leap and started my own show, and I've been as honest as possible with all my guests and just everything going on in the world. And I'm glad I finally did, because I feel we should, as a country, especially in the United States, like we have the opportunity to speak up and talk about things and talk through things and learn other people's perspectives. And that's a great part of being an American and living in this country and living in these times. I mean, we just have so much to be grateful for. So I'm really glad I took the leap this year and started the show. I hope for people that have listened, have got some entertainment out of it. And like always, I don't do these to make profit, at least for the time being. Who knows what the future holds? But my main motivation now is just to have really good conversation and grow myself and, entertain, a few listeners here and there. So if you enjoy these, please share with your friends. It helps out a lot. Recommend to your friends. Say this is the podcast you need to be listening to. And, rate 5 stars on iTunes. And look forward to creating many great new episodes in 2021.
This is Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams, where differing opinions are not only accepted, they're encouraged.
You mentioned something so important right there. I mean, it's
What's
that should be like the most important thing we're talking about in 2020, in my opinion. You have the Democratic Party, who allegedly is for the middle class and for the working people, telling all those people they can't fucking work and the rich are getting richer because of Democratic policies right now. Like,
right.
That's the craziest thing I've seen. Like,
and
out of everything.
And I'm telling you, like, this is I want to share this because I feel that so few people are taking this perspective on it, but it's so important. It's victim mentality. Like, it is. People are addicted to being victims. I know it so well because I was that way for so much of my life. So people can actually become emotionally addicted to their own emotions, addicted to the emotion of feeling like I'm wronged and I, get to complain or get to basically just not take responsibility for myself. It's a very childish reaction, but I understand where it comes from because people are just heavily wounded. But the problem is, this victim mentality, it's completely anything that the government will throw at you, like coronavirus, and you have an opportunity to be a victim of it, you will jump at that opportunity. So that's why we see the left, who tends to have more victim mentality, they're the ones who's all the, what's the term, like mask holes, or like where they're shaming everyone for not wearing a mask. And like, hey, it's always aimed outward. It's never self-accountability. Hey, I make my own health choices. I feel like wearing a mask to protect my health. That's my choice. I'm not going to tell other people what to do. But it's because they have victim mentality that they feel the need to always blame, shame, and project others. And that's why you see they've taken the stance of, this virus is so dangerous. This virus is so dangerous. It's like, dude, why are you believing the news? Why are you just so blindly believing the, quote, experts when they share these, quote, facts with you? It's because in their subconscious mind, they're like, oh my God, goody, another opportunity to be a victim. Yes, I was just running out of a supply. Now I get to be a victim of this virus, and I get to shame everyone else who is, now victimizing me by putting me and my family in danger by opening their business and by not wearing masks and by refusing the vaccine. I mean, it's just another opportunity for people to be victims. And I won't go into it just right now, but that's all the way down to the Black Lives Matter thing. It's the same thing. And I'm not saying that systemic racism doesn't exist or that there aren't disadvantages that come with being Black that are solely exclusive to being Black that I will never know about, no matter how poor and underprivileged I am as a white person. I do think that's real. I don't think that the way that they're attacking it is the answer, and we can get into more of why that is. But
yeah, I wanna ask you what you think the solution for all this victim mentality is, because I 1,000% agree. I just wanted to add one more thing on the whole Black Lives Matter movement. I got a lot of hate. People message me mean things and remove me as friends and stuff and blah blah blah. But
yeah.
I was like, what is the point? And I've like made it like really clear. The NBA boycotting strictly for the purpose of boycotting without a clear goal accomplishes nothing. If anything, it just does more harm. You have a league that's almost exclusively black players with a fan base that by far has the largest percentage of just urban black fan base, and they're boycotting without a clear, so like, we're gonna boycott, but what do we want the end result to be? So there is no end result. So there's just boycotting to boycott. If LeBron James and or anybody that's, you know, a respected person in the NBA said, hey, we're boycotting until A, B, and C happens. Until this police reform law is in place, which even the furthest right conservative doesn't want police having too much power. And I talked about this on my last episode. The country can unite. Like, fuck that. We don't want police taking advantage of people and abusing their power. Like, absolutely not does 99% Americans want that. But boycotting with the say we want racial justice, what does that even mean? And I feel like it's just, for me, I feel it's extremely irresponsible for guys like LeBron. Like, I can see people in the streets, even though I don't agree with violence in the streets and stuff. I kind of have somewhat of like empathy and understanding of the pain, because they're just told they can't their whole lives, right? Like, giving that, they were given victim mentality. And I feel the Democratic Party, that's like what they do in 2020 is just like embody people with that type of mentality, which is why I've been shifting more right. One of the reasons. But like, I think there's a responsible way to make change. And I do have empathy for people in pain, even though I don't agree with it. I kind of understand. I have no agreement and understanding with guys in power that are in the top fraction of 1% of 1%, some of the wealthiest people in the world, like being super irresponsible and saying stuff like LeBron tweets multiple times now, like, I have to be worried about walking in the street because I'm black. Like, I don't think that does any good. And I think with LeBron's power, I think he actually could do a lot of change. And now I do think what the NBA did recently, which they're making a coalition with the governors, I think is great, to actually have conversations with heads of police departments and governors and stuff like that. I actually think that's by far the best thing they've done throughout all this. But the other thing, we're making NBA arenas voting centers, i.e. we're going to create a voting center so we can hopefully get Biden elected and get more Democrats in power. Like, the NBA is doing that to push the Democratic narrative, not to, because we want everybody to vote no matter who they vote for. It's like, hey, we're going to push this narrative, Trump's racist, and we're going to create all these voting centers safely, because we're also scaring you of COVID so you can come vote safely.
Right.
I don't know. I'm going on a little rant.
Yeah, it's so many good points that you brought up. There's so many good points about the NBA boycott and like, what is this really accomplishing, all the way down to like, dude, LeBron, like, what is he, how much money is LeBron worth? Like, you are the epitome of like the American dream, and you're black, why not focus on that? So to me, it all comes down to, and I just want to side note say, it's just really laughable to me that they all call Trump racist, because Joe Biden said one of the most racist things I've ever heard a politician say, which was, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. I mean, like, that's what the definition of racism used to be, Jeremy. Of course, now the definition of racism is just not being a Democrat. No matter how racist the Democrats talk, it's like, not like, as long as you're a Democrat, you're not racist. So it's just, again, wounded people can't see reality. And the thing that really, the thing that I will say for me is, and again, like, it's so perfect 2020. It's like all the healing that I've done personally in my life for my own personal wounds are now I'm like seeing reflected in the world. Like, oh, wow, the whole world has victim mentality and all these things need to shift, because if there's anything I've learned, it's that your thoughts create your reality. Okay. Your thoughts create your reality. So again, I'm not saying that there aren't issues that come with being black, but I do not think focusing so much on being a victim of your race helps, because you actually manifest
I
it.
agree with that completely, and it's taken me years to learn this. As society, so we're told we shouldn't feel a certain way and that we shouldn't think a certain way, which is not good at all, right? Like, and this, fortunately, that's why therapy, even if you don't have an expert level therapist, if you have somebody that just sits there and listens to you, it's so powerful. And that's why I wish therapy didn't have such a negative connotation, because even at the most basic level, entry level therapists, like in school, it's still somebody to listen to you and just not judge and shake their head. But like even thoughts too, like we have these, like, and again, I like talking about all sorts of subjects, and I think this is relevant, and you don't necessarily have to share your opinion on this if you want, but like racism is really prevalent. The conversation of racism is really prevalent in 2020. Mm-hmm. And if people are having racist thoughts, we shouldn't be telling them they shouldn't have, like, if thoughts are coming up and feelings are coming up, oftentimes they can't control those thoughts or feelings. So the solution is actually having those thoughts, saying, hey, I'm like, you know, not that I have like a whole bunch of racist thoughts coming up with my therapist, but I have some thoughts that I'm not really proud to share and admit, right? The solution isn't saying, hey, you shouldn't be feeling that way, you shouldn't be thinking that way. Like, let's talk about these things, and then next time they come up, you can be like, okay, I'm thinking this way because of this pattern or whatever it is. I know this isn't who I want to be, and you can kind of self-correct, but it's not telling yourself or telling people they shouldn't think or feel a certain way. It's like, hey, I'm acknowledging that I'm thinking and feeling this way. I no longer want to think and feel this way. Here's some ways to possibly improve on that, right? And again, this is my self-talk that I've been trying to improve in areas of my life. What are your thoughts on that overall?
I couldn't agree more. And I think it goes back to that same principle of emotion, where if we have thoughts that keep popping up and we keep repressing them, they also rarely go away, right? Usually, it actually gives them more power. There's kind of that mentality of what you focus on grows that would apply here, right? It's so overused, but I can't think of a better example. When you say to someone, don't think of a pink elephant, like immediately you think of a pink elephant, you know? And so if you say, well, don't think this thought, don't think this thought, well, you keep giving that thought power, and you do yourself a disservice by not exploring it.
Yeah.
Because again, most of us are quite rational people. It doesn't always look like it, especially to others and sometimes to ourselves, but that's because we're refusing to, or we just don't see the bigger picture. So, I do this often when I look at people that I initially really don't like. You know, I whether it's a coworker or just a stranger, or whether it's a world leader even, you know, it's easy to look at somebody from afar and say, well, they're an idiot. That's stupid. Like, how could they do that? They're horrible, right? And sometimes we do that to ourselves. How could I have this thought? How on earth could I act this way? Why did I do that? And if we just stop there, that's very judgmental and does no one any good. But if you instead get curious about it and you say, well, that's an interesting thought. I'm uncomfortable about that. Wonder where that's coming from. You know, that can be very instructive because it's a sign. I believe our emotions and even our thoughts are gifts to us, and they're signs, they're invitations to look deeper. And so that's why, to your point, Jeremy, I'm with you. Therapy is immensely valuable. Take it from a guy who did 4 years of it. You know, like, it transformed my life. And in large part it is because it's that safe space to explore things and to get at the underlying reasons behind it. And so, you know, I was talking with a client the other day who was saying, well, how do I manage this conversation with somebody in my family who's very racist, like very, very aggressive racist? And of course, I don't agree with that. And I'm trying to get them to stop. What do I do? Like, how on earth would I validate them? And of course, out the gates, you're like, well, of course you don't want to validate that. That's wrong. But I'll challenge you on that, because if you want that other person to even have a prayer at seeing a different perspective, they need to at least feel respected. And so my advice to this person was, get curious. Like, ask them, like, why? I'm curious. Why do you feel that way? You know, was there something that happened? I mean, and let's just say for a moment that particular person witnessed a horrific crime by somebody of that particular race. Well, suddenly that gives you at least a little more understanding behind why they're acting the way they are, right? Doesn't excuse it. It doesn't mean that now they get to be racist, but it at least gives you a little more insight. And so that's why I'm such a big proponent of curiosity and of at least digging a little deeper, because then in that person's instance, that person's situation, it at least gives them a chance to discuss it. And who knows, they may even be able to help that person recognize, oh, well, that is why I'm feeling this way. And yeah, you're right. That was an isolated instance. And okay, I guess I can appreciate how maybe I've got some work to do there. Whereas you would never have gotten there if you just kept saying, don't be racist, don't be racist, don't be racist. That doesn't help. So I'm getting a little long-winded here. But all of that to say, I agree that we need to dig deeper into our thoughts and our emotions and not be so quick to judge.
I couldn't agree more with that. And I'll give you a similar example with, and I won't say who, but it's an older person that's someone in my life, and they said some racist comments, and I recently did get a little curious, rather than just being like, why the F would you say that? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, hey, like, I don't necessarily agree. Like, where does that come from? And it ended, after going through the conversation, it ended up coming out like, hey, when my kids were little, it was when they were starting to integrate schools, and my daughters got put at a school that was majority black, and I'm sure if it was majority white or majority black, it wasn't obviously going to be equal everywhere. That, when you just overnight integrate a bunch of schools, my kids were picked on, and so it's just like, okay, obviously I don't agree with what you're saying, and I don't support the comments you're saying, but I kind of understand your feeling because it's a little personal to you. And hey, like, wouldn't it have been great to sit down with the parents of those kids and sit, I'm sure their parents, if they would have known, would have been like disgusted. Don't treat people like that, right? Like, especially during that time. So again, it doesn't mean I agree with the comments, but it's okay. I can kind of understand where those thoughts are coming from, and if this person's never had therapy or talk through it or analyze these feelings and just been bottling it in for decades potentially, you can understand why there could be some anger with those.
Totally. Well, and that's then what you just said, Jeremy, is validating. To say, well, as they're sharing the experience, sometimes you don't even have to say words to validate. So if you were sharing that to me, Jeremy, and saying, well, this is what happened with my kids as I was growing up, I'd be going, geez, are you kidding me? Like shaking my head, like, that's painful. Of course. And that's validating. And then to say, okay, well, given what you went through, I can at least appreciate where you're coming from. I can at least see where those thoughts are coming from. And of course, as you know, I still think that your comments are hurtful. Are you open to a different perspective, or maybe you say, can you at least appreciate that that was an isolated instance and not everybody acts like that? There are options now. You have multiple jumping off points in that conversation, and hopefully that person's open to more of a dialogue, and they're going to be more willing to listen to you, most likely, once you first listened to them and once you first validated them, and they feel like, all right, well, Jeremy gets me at least. Like, I've shared that. I don't share that with most people, but I can tell that he's being respectful here. Let's talk.
Yeah. And I believe most prejudice in general, racism is a form of prejudice. I don't think it's as much hate and fear as it's much just maybe slightly fear, but not as much hate, just unknown and ignorance, and just like, and I think that just having the type of conversations that we're having, whether it's racism or any other big topic, which is crazy. I just referenced that I turned 30 recently. I don't know if you guys know, but when we started working together, I was 25. I feel like I'm stupid now, Kevin. Back then, the fact you trusted me to do business, man, I felt like I still do a lot of dumb shit, let alone 5 years ago. So what do you think was the biggest in the quantum venture? What do you think was the biggest learning lesson and biggest positive takeaway that you guys took from like future deals?
Well, I think that we all assumed a little too much, maybe. This is one of the challenges you run into in ventures with partners. It's like, sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. We're buying media. Are we shipping? Are we getting returns? So I think there was a lag time of getting information. And I think there were some media sources that we probably shouldn't have continued to run with. I just think things are a lot tighter nowadays in how we run campaigns, and I'm sure they are for you also, because all of a sudden we were just spending. I mean, what did we get that campaign up to weekly? $100,000 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were spending quite a bit of money. Yeah.
No, we were doing 100 something grand a day.
100 grand a day in media.
Oh,
right?
I don't know about me, Jeremy. I don't remember.
Yeah, we definitely had 100 grand plus days in revenue. I don't remember what the height at media was because we were doing a lot of affiliate traffic. But regardless, there was a lot of money going in and out, and a little small company that we kind of it happened really quick. I mean, in everybody's defense, I'll say it just grew really, really quick, and I don't think any of us were like necessarily prepared for that, and we didn't like plan out like, hey, what if we 100x revenue in the next month? Like, we weren't necessarily planned for that.
I mean, I think we made mistakes with we brought a lot of people on, and there were salaried people, and sometimes that's disruptive for folks. They got to, some people had to move, and I don't like disrupting people's lives, and so I just think that I think the good news is we came right out of the box with amazing sales. I mean, I know we did millions. I don't know if it was 8 or 10 million or whatever the number was, but I mean, it came out of the box hot, and we assumed we were making a lot of money. When the dust settled, we didn't. And that's shame on all of us for not, we didn't keep our eye on the money good enough. And in all honesty, I mean, I can say that that's been part of my challenge over the years, and that's why I was hoping for you young guys to get in there and watch the money a little bit better, because
that's what we'd hoping you would do, Kevin.
Yeah, we were watching it come in and go out. So
yeah. I remember Brian called me like one morning at like 7 a.m. Do you remember this, Brian? He's like, Stripe just took like 90 grand out of our account.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. Hey, I had that happen to me years ago. It was 2 million.
Jeremy, I don't know an exact answer. It's interesting because I think back about it. Like, I feel like we all learned a tremendous amount from that year or whatever it was. It's tough to pinpoint exactly, but learned a lot about like how to work with people, how to hire, who to hire, and more about just kind of like, because this was also, I don't want to say it was the beginning of like Facebook advertising, but it was, it was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was. So, there was still a lot that everyone was kind of going through and learning, and I think it definitely helped all of us. I would probably say.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm super, super grateful for the learning experience and everything. This is just a random question. Brian, you can answer it. Kevin, is there any areas, and this is, you're not expecting what I'm about to ask you. I just think this is a good question. Any areas, honestly, that I could improve as a partner? If there's any like glaring weaknesses of mine, you'd be like, if Jeremy fixed this, he would just be a fucking badass.
Huh.
That's on your own situation, not something you could help us with?
Yeah. Where are areas you think I could have improved as a business partner?
Oh.
I don't remember.
That's a good question. I mean, I would say that, look, you when we started working together, you were 25 years old. I sometimes forget that I deal with people that I've been dealing with. In some cases, I've got people that have been in my networks for 35, 40 years. And so you're used to a certain kind of way of doing business, right? So I think it's tough for young guys like yourselves to make all those connections. So I think you did a pretty good job, but I'd say the most important thing in my mind is getting your capabilities announced to the industry. And I think you and Max did a great job of that, doing podcasts and I never forget the way we ended up doing business. You called me and said, "Hey, Kevin, you're not doing much in the way of your social media, and I think I can help you, and I'm willing to do it for no charge, just to show you how good we are, and then you're going to want to recommend us and or do business with us." So that approach is amazing, and it worked, and it got us in business together. And I don't know if you did that very many more times, but maybe I would say you could have done that another 100 times, and it would have played well for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I never told you this, but Ian hated that idea. I was like, "Ian, you just gotta trust me." He like cried about it for weeks straight. He's like, "I don't want to do free work." I'm like, "Ian, it's part of business, bro. Like, what do you like?"
Hey, every time you mention that name, I don't even say anymore.
Yeah, no, but it was funny. But yeah, I've done that a few times. I mean, I think it's just important sometimes to just build relationships, and the long-term opportunity outweighed the like, what would I send you an invoice for like a few grand? You know what I mean? Like the upside, I was thinking like 5, 10, 20 years down the road, not like, "Hey, I'd love to make a few grand," or whatever it is like that.
Yeah.
And I was already doing well with my manufacturing business. Like I didn't care that much about like an extra few grand or whatever it would have been. So the long-term upside was more important.
Hey, are you still doing some of that manufacturing stuff?
Yeah, so long story short, we sold the business. Wasn't a big, glorious exit, but we got some cash. I have a royalty earn out for 6 years. It just became really, really stressful, really capital intensive. Unicorn was taken off. My other partners, the guys that own Brewster's Ice Cream, that's over $100 million a year ice cream company, they're just like, "This is becoming too much of a headache." So it's just the headache and the partnership dynamic. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but there was some stealing going on in the like.
No way, really?
I mean, just like, I don't want to get in like trouble for it. Just there was some shady stuff going on amongst team members and partners, and it just just gets to a point where it's not worth it. Like the headache isn't worth the whatever income you're making, and I cared about my peace of mind more than anything. So we just decided to sell the company for a lot less than we probably could have and just move on.
Jeremy, remember when we had an employee steal out of our bank account every single day and we just never realized it? Do you remember that?
No, I know. That's why I was kind of making a joke with that. I don't know if you guys have ever.
She got like 70 grand. Like that was the stupidest thing that we could have done. Very stupid. But that I forgot about that.
Now I'm hearing it again. I remember this.
You remember that? It was $70,000 over like 3 months.
Went after this girl, did we?
Well,
no, we never did. There was really no. It was a tough road, so we never did.
Well, why? And again, I don't even know if she was intentionally this smart, but it ended up being smart. Is because we had our store and it would purchase stuff from Amazon. We were buying it wholesale and then retailing it, so we would have thousands of Amazon expenses a day, thousands of dollars in Amazon expenses a day. So she would just do like 500 in Amazon here, 300 Amazon here. And when we're looking at reports, we just think it's part of our like COGS, like just, hey, this is our products we're buying wholesale. So it just kind of blended in until a couple months we like really started trying to look closer at the numbers, which again was, my mistake, Max's mistake. I mean, we just were growing so fast, and then we realized like, hey, like, what the fuck is this? Like, she was buying like child's dolls and stuff.
She was.
Yeah.
She was taking money out of the ATM machine too.
Yeah, so, that's what triggered it. Is we're like, who took like, I think the max you can take out of a debit card is like $500 or whatever it was.
700 a day. Or
yeah, and we're like, who withdrew? And that's where she got like. Yeah, I mean, that's when I guess everybody, it's like American greed. Like, they never get caught until they just, like, get real ridiculous with it. And, like, once we started seeing cash taken out of, like, I don't think there was ever a cash withdrawal in, like, 2 years until we're like, who just withdrew $700 in cash? And that's what triggered it. That was, I mean, again, all that stuff, like, looking back at it, I feel like my intentions were good. And, like, but it's just a lot of inexperience, and it like again, none of that stuff's happened since, but unfortunately it takes
I mean, I got another memory, because here was another deal that we all had equity in, and this, you remember the Peeps deal, this little product, this is still continuing to crush it. It'll be a big hit again, fourth quarter of this year.
I mean, yeah, Peeps was awesome. I mean, we have a relationship with Giddy Up. I know they're still doing some volume with Peeps after all these years. So
yeah. So do you guys have some products that Giddy Up's moving out for you?
Not right now, but we're on the traffic side. So what we've just decided to do as an organization, we have a few like consulting relationships here and there, but you guys know client work is a pain. So what we do is we have relationships with networks like Giddy Up, and our team's good at what we do. We're building more and more credibility and trust in the space. So they'll front some ad spend budget. They'll do everything they can to we run traffic to offers. So we would run traffic to an offer like Giddy Up rather than bringing them products. Or if you guys brought them a product, we would be a person they'd reach out to and say, hey, scale this product. And it's just a way more simple relationship than client work. We just do whatever we want. We don't have to deal with the stress of certain people calling it Sunday at 5 p.m. being why the F, you know what I mean? We don't have to deal with anything, and we just get to sleep good at night this way. So I wanted to ask you about before, but it's honestly, I've been curious. I just been kind of scared, and I didn't know necessarily how to approach it. And I know, and you referenced it with lockdowns too. Mental health. I mean, again, I see a therapist, I have coach. Mental health is my number 2 core value. Mental and physical health is a big fucking deal. And I saw some study recently that during 2020, 1 out of every 4 18 to 24-year-olds contemplated suicide because of the lockdowns, because of not being able to socialize with friends, being able to live their lives. And we just talk about there's so many there's a domino effect of a lot of shit going on, and mental health that's maybe the biggest epidemic of our generation. I mean, I can tell you I've had to work through major things myself personally. I still have to work through things. Relationships have been a major challenge because of it. But I'd love to, I know you experienced some big challenges in that area with Connor. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Not at all, Jeremy. And, I just read some of those same studies where, these lockdowns, the anxiety and depression and suicide among young people is skyrocketing. I mean, it's at an epidemic level. Suicides among our military, I think 22 a day or something, which is an insane number that we're losing so many people. I don't, so I'll preface this conversation. I don't know what we can do about mental health, but there are a couple things I think we can all do every day, and that is we can hug and love the people we're with and we're around every day, and we can work hard to remove the shame of that being looked at as a weakness. When I got cancer, I was surrounded by the best doctors and support and kindness and love. And, when somebody is suffering from depression or anxiety or suicide, many times they're looked at as, what's wrong with you? Why are you weak? Why can't you snap out of it? They have no more ability to change that chemistry in their brain than I did of doing the surgery on my cancer and curing that myself, or when I feel heart disease or arthritis or others. So you met Connor on the day you and Maxwell and I and a group of people.
We went to the Columbia restaurant, I remember, in celebration. Yep.
Yes. And I told him, where we have a huge opportunity to partner with a group of amazing people. So, dress up in a suit. And, I messed with him a little bit. So you saw he was dressed really nice in a suit. And I was wearing, a Christmas sweater and pants. And I think you came in shorts, comfortable, relaxed. And he was the only guy with a suit. I was like, come on, Dad. So, but you met him, a kind, articulate. He's an MMA fighter. He wrestled. Connor was on the debate team. He was in band. He really kind of a renaissance man, athlete, athletic, and academics. He played football. And what you saw that day was what you got with Connor, who he is as a human being. So, he ate healthy for the most part. I'm not sure if it was CTI or if, he had struggled with CTE, sorry. If he had struggled with depression, anxiety, there were a little bit in the past. And, as a father, I don't know sometimes if, I handled depression or anxiety properly. I didn't know enough about it at the time. If I can share with you, I think a week before he passed away, he said, Dad and Mom, you'll be okay without me. And we immediately knew something wasn't right. And we got him into counseling. And we saw a counselor Monday, January 29th. And it went really well. Came home, being happy. And then the next day, Tuesday, January 30th, he passed away. And I can tell you, there's no possible way to articulate losing a child, losing someone to suicide, losing your best friend, losing a beautiful human being. At his funeral, Jeremy, my wife and I felt like we were utter failures. How do you lose your son? How do you lose a loved one on your watch? And so his funeral was in Maitland, and my wife and I were going to shake everybody's hand that came to the funeral. And we stood for 2.5 hours shaking hands. And the funeral home director came up, he was probably 70. He said, I've never seen anything like this. We're going to have to stop greeting people. There's a line down 1792 for a mile, 4 deep. And he's like, we've never seen anything like this. And I'm not being braggadocious. I'm just sharing that everyone who shook our hand and everyone who showed up to a T said he was the kindest human being they'd ever met. There was a lady who showed up. He was a server at Santiago's Bodega. He was busing while he was going to college at Santiago's Bodega. He was very humble. He went from doing presentations to Publix and Wegmans and other places to busing and working his way up to be a server. He overheard a lady who didn't have anybody to help her put up plywood for a hurricane coming. Connor volunteered to do it. A friend from the 6th grade came and said, a lot of people made fun of me. Connor and I were in band together. He never made fun of me. He was my only friend. His kindergarten teacher, Mr. Smith, came. We met so many people, and we didn't even know the kindness that he had gone out to the world and shared. I know there are people that can be like, Richie Mcpeak's an asshole. Let's be honest, But to a T, every one of them said that Connor made a difference in his life. And one of the most moving things was the dishwasher from Santiago's Bodega, who was from China. He worked 5 jobs, incredibly intelligent man. He was older. He was retired. He just wanted to work. He was teaching Connor Mandarin, and him and Connor would eat hot pot the guy would make, every night in an old bucket and throw in all the scraps and make hot pot. And the whole entire restaurant came dressed. And this specific man said Connor was one of the most humble, kind human beings I've ever met. Even though I was a dishwasher, he treated me like the general manager. And the general manager was there. His wrestling team, there was a young man who wanted to quit wrestling in the 9th grade. And Connor was a captain and said, you can make it. We can do this together. And he ended up becoming a team captain and stayed in wrestling because of Connor. And the whole team came and put his jacket and his coffin. But what I realized then, Jeremy, people say if someone's depressed or anxiety or suicide, then maybe they have a drug problem, they have an alcohol problem, they're weak, what's wrong with them? Connor wasn't perfect, but here is a human being who was kind, who I saw him wrestle 5 matches with a dislocated shoulder and a torn labrum and got 3rd place. I saw him MMA. I saw him have the discipline he aced the Florida FCAT when he was in the 4th or 5th grade. He got a 32 on the ACT out of 36. I'm not being braggadocious. I'm just saying here's a human being that academically and physically was one of the most disciplined people I had ever met. And yet this disease took over and there was nothing he could do. So I share that suicide is not shame. Anxiety and depression is not weakness. I believe it is a disease or a buildup from circumstances in our life or triggers that temporarily or permanently can incapacitate us. And it's our job as a people to recognize this and see how we can save more people like Connor, more people like veterans, young people, more people like you, and how we can uplift them and help them work through depression and anxiety and thoughts of suicide. One of the things we're doing is honor, and I hope you and I can partner on this. We're going to create a foundation called Connor's Hugs. I hugged him for 10 seconds the last time I saw him. And we're going to create a network of providers, starting with the woman who saw and someone our daughter went to who recommended high amounts of vitamin D and B vitamins. And we want to create revenue to pay these providers to have people come in and see them that can't afford to go to counseling or get medicine. One of the last things Connor said to us was, he was feeling incredibly depressed and he's like, but he didn't have insurance. So he's like, I don't want the burden of you guys paying for counseling if I need medicine. And I said, listen, it would be the same thing if you had diabetes. You would pay for your insulin, or you would, or we'd figure out. Or if you had heart disease or cancer. So I think a lot of these, first of all, I think mental health prevention and access to mental health care should be available to everyone. And especially people who are suffering from anxiety and depression and thoughts of suicide. They should feel comfortable. We have to get through that this is not shame, and how we can help them instead of thinking that something's wrong with them.
Yeah. Well, very grateful that you shared all that. Thank you. And I agree completely with mental health being like something you could argue it's more important than physical health. Not that physical health isn't important, but if your brain's not in a good spot, like what else matters, right? I I love the idea of that type of nonprofit because it's something that I am extremely passionate about. And I agree with you. Sadly, there's a negative connotation when it comes to people sharing they're having issues. And I actually view that as a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. If you're strong enough to be vulnerable and say, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling depressed, I'm not feeling myself, I think that's 1,000 times stronger than the people that just go through life pretending like everything's okay, but they're afraid to share because of judgment or whatever. Like we should be encouraged to share with our close friends and family stuff that's going on in our life. That should be no different than other conversation we have. Like, how's your work? What'd you eat for dinner? Where's your mental health? I mean, that's like that. It should be a normal conversation. So, I agree completely there. I've definitely had some really, really, deep, dark thoughts over the years. One thing that happens to me, and a lot of it's to do with like childhood and stuff, I have, some major codependency tendencies in like relationships, and like it's like devastating for me at times when I've gotten out of romantic relationships because I was just so codependent on them for energy and motivation and like almost like living. Like, it's crazy, it's super unhealthy. And then when that ends, when that's like cut off, it's just like a vital like blood to an organ. It's just like it's a disaster. And fortunately I've been in a spot to have good mentors and friends and mental health professionals to talk through. But I can't like, there's just some tricky things going on with our brain, and some like when we're not in a good spot, like it can be a really scary. Do you feel, and this may not be in like an easy question to answer, but I feel like it's really relevant. Do you feel in 2020 the color of your skin makes a difference? Not wealth, not class, not anything like that. Strictly the color of your skin makes a difference in how successful you can be as an American.
I do not personally believe that this color of my skin dictates the level of my success. I think everyone is dealt a hand, right? Using a poker reference. Everyone gets 2 cards. And some people's starting hands better than another, no doubt, right? So do I have some obstacles to overcome because I'm black that a white man in my same position doesn't have to deal with? Sure, right? But maybe, but we all have our hands, right? Like, and it's not what you're given, it's how you play it, right? So if that white man who's built, who's in my same position doesn't have my work ethic, I will win. If that white man who's in my same position doesn't have my aptitude to take these complex methodologies and financial, calculations and articulate them to people in a manner that's palatable where they can take action, then I win, right? So at the end of the day, there are pros and cons to every situation, right? Like, what were the odds I was going to be a 5'8" college basketball player? Probably not that high, right? But I'm like, okay, like, let's go, right? And so there's always going to be challenges, but that goes for me being white, black rather, someone who's white, Hispanic, a man, a woman, gay, straight, Muslim, Christian. Like, choose your poison. What's your excuse, right? At the end of the day, we all have something we could hang our hat on and go, this is why I'm not going to make it, or this is why this is too hard for me. And it's like, okay, you can make an excuse or you can overcome it. My mind is something that I say a lot, right? Like, Jeremy, all paths in life lead to not worrying about anything. Here's what I mean by that. If you have a problem and you can do something about it, don't worry about it, right? Right? Just go. If you have a problem and you can't do anything about it, don't worry about it, right? When you're going to worry about it, you can't do anything about it. So in my life, it's like the only thing I control and the thing that I focus on right now for me is the process, is my work. I'm detached from the outcome. So if I bust my tail, if I do everything possible to succeed, and I don't reach my goals, okay, I'm okay with that because I put it out there, right? If I can't say I've done everything in my power to be as great a man, a father, a great friend as I can be, if I haven't done that and then I fall short, who do I have to blame? Who can I point the finger at someone else? If I haven't done everything I need to do? Nah, right? My mom going back to this school situation, I'm 4th grade, right? I've always gotten all A's, go to this school, situation's bad, right? Get picked on every day, fighting all the kids every day at school, not doing well in school. My grades were all C's. First time I never got a C in my life. All C's. We get the report card. I'm like, oh my God, my dad's double PhD. My mom is a government employee. They're going to kill me. Right? So my mom gets a report card. I'm ready. This is back in the day when you could still spank your kids. So I'm getting ready for the whooping, right? And my mom says to me, you know, if this was the best you can do, I'm okay, right? Like these grades are okay. If this isn't the best you can do, if you didn't do everything you can do, if you didn't work as hard as you can work and these are your grades, then I'm disappointed. And I took that like, okay, this wasn't the best I could do. I didn't focus. I was distracted. I wasn't happy. Let me control what I control, do what I can do. And then from that point forward, I flipped it on its head and I finished the year all A's. And these little lessons, right? And this is why it's so important, as whether it be your role as a father or as a business owner or even as a friend, is so important to encourage people, because it's those little lessons, it's those moments in life that can define you. And if you can take just one lesson from it and turn that into something positive into your life, it can have a tremendous impact.
Yeah, that's really good perspective from your mom. That's really good. I don't know if I've ever heard that exactly explained to a child, but I feel like that's how you can get a child to start acting like an adult really quick. Because no one wants to get told what to do, you know?
Right.
So the mindset you're talking about, which I agree completely. I think America has a bunch of victim mindsets, right? It's just you can always find a reason to blame your situation on why you can't be successful or why you can. And I had a buddy of mine named LaShawn. He was on one of my first episodes. We talked about, he's a black entrepreneur, a really good friend of mine. We talked about the term white privilege. And I was like, I'm not a big fan of that term, because it doesn't help anybody, first of all. And then I grew up, really low income area. My parents low income, but they weren't addicts or anything like that. I mean, tons of friends lived in, crappy little trailers. Their cars were getting repossessed. Their parents were addicted to drugs and alcohol. And I'm like, try to tell me the privilege that these white kids have. Maybe they.
Let me break it down for you though, and so it will make sense, right? To your point, being white doesn't mean you have a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house and a Mercedes-Benz and a trust fund, right? To your point, you're like, no, dude, I was wondering where the next meal is coming from. I get it. I think the idea of white privilege comes around more from how society judges you. For example, right? If I grew up in a upper middle class black household and I walk into a store, my parents make a couple $100,000 a year, I can afford those brand new shoes, I can afford those jeans. And I walk into a store, right, as a young teenage black man. That store clerk's following me around, right? You come in there broke, right? You haven't eaten, and you're looking like, man, I'm going to steal something because I need shoes and my mom can't afford shoes for me. No one's following you around, right? And the idea, that's that privilege that's that undertone. So it doesn't even have to do with your actual lot in life right there, right? And so that's some of the challenge. Now, for a white man or woman to go, I'm white, so I'm going to be successful, and this trailer park's going and the house is just going to pop on my lap. Yeah, right. you got to do the work like you've done, right? I work with you personally. I know you've busted your tail, and now by all accounts, you're successful. You're a 1%er already, right? You made that choice, right? As does anyone. So being white doesn't mean you're going to be successful. Being black doesn't mean that you're always going to be impoverished and taken down. But you have to consider, okay, well, how is society looking at us? How is society, what narrative are they giving to us? Now it's your choice to embrace it or block it out, put your head down and do what you got to do, right? But I think that's the thing. I think that if that helps making clarity as to why. Yeah.
Those are very good points, and I agree with a lot of that. I mean, why wouldn't we just call it like improper discrimination of, people of color or whatever? Like, I feel like that's a more accurate term, but to just say someone's white and privileged, I grew up.
I feel like, to your point, and then you could tell me, you're asking me how I feel as a black man, as a white person, you could say, that wasn't me, right? Like, I never had slaves. Like, I didn't, I've been cool with everybody. Why am I getting this, raw deal now in 2020, right? And that I don't think it's fair either, right? I don't think that because you're white, like you're a racist or your grandfather had slaves or you're that. That's not you didn't. I want to judge people on them.
Yeah.
Jeremy, what have you done to me? Jeremy, what have you said to me? And that is how I'm going to base my exchanges with you, as I would want the people to do the same for me. Alrighty, Eszylfie, what have you done to me? What have you said to me? And then let's either be cool or not cool based on our exchanges.
Totally. And I agree with that completely. And the craziest thing about truly judging people by the color of their skin is, like, good friends are hard enough to find. If you're just going to not be somebody's friend because, like, the skin, like, you're just cutting your pool in half there. Like, it's like, how many people do you truly trust? Like, you're like ride or dies. Like, those people are so hard to find. It's like, I'll take them anywhere I can get them. You know what I mean? I don't care what somebody looks like. I mean, truly good friends that's just like going to do anything for you. I mean, like that's what's crazy about anything. I will say, I mean, and I know this is a common rhetoric, and I know this isn't like maybe the popular rhetoric. I do think it has a lot to do with age and upbringing. I do feel like every generation is just because we're growing up with more diversity and a little bit more open mind. It's the older generation of our society right now. I'm not saying there's not, millennial racists out there. There are, but if there's one glimmer of hope, is I just think every new generation is just like, I like nice people and I hate assholes. I don't give a fuck what your skin color is or what your religion is or who you have sex with, or you know what I mean? Like, at this point, like, who cares about any of that? If you're a good person, you're a good person.
Thank you for listening to Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player so you get updated when new episodes are live. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support is to leave a 5-star review and share the podcast with people in your life that you feel would benefit from these types of discussions. Visit openlyoutspoken.com for additional details on the show. Find out how to connect with Jeremy on social media and learn more information about Jeremy's personal and business life. We'll see you next time.